And once again, good morning, church. Well, this month, we're focusing on some ways that we can strengthen our spiritual and emotional health. Last week, we began by looking at the importance of choosing to trust God. Whatever fears or anxieties are facing me, the solution that will bring me peace always includes choosing to put my trust in God, who has promised to care for me and has shown himself to be utterly and eternally reliable. Because he is faithful, I can be assured that when I put my trust in him, I will not be put to shame or find myself abandoned. I have a promise from God who cannot lie, and that promise is sufficient to see me through whatever difficulties come my way in this life. I can trust him to do good, to bring good to me, and to bring me safely through every trial, every bit of suffering and pain, till he returns or calls me home. So I choose to trust him and to trust his promise to me. Well, unless you're new or visiting this morning, you all know the reason I'm in this lovely gray boot. In June, I tore my Achilles tendon, and I've been wearing this boot ever since to protect the damaged tissues while I heal. After about a month, I was able to start physical therapy. So twice a week, I see my physical therapist, and I have daily exercises to strengthen the muscles in my feet and legs and stretch out my tendons and restore the flexibility in my tissues and joints. And all of these extraordinary additions to my daily and weekly schedule are designed so that I can resume the very ordinary activity of walking normally. I'm very appreciative of my orthopedist and the therapists and their expertise and their instruction and encouragement, the equipment that's helping me recover from the self-inflicted damage that incapacitated me on that pickleball court. I've actually learned a lot from the experience, especially from the physical therapy. And I'd like to share some of that with you this morning as we talk about choosing to persist and how that can build our emotional and spiritual health. Because my injury and my road to recovery are a convenient and helpful illustration of what we need to do to live emotionally and spiritually healthy lives. At the risk, though, of overstating the obvious, let's begin by remembering that the Bible consistently pictures the life of God's people, followers of Christ, as a walk, not an evening stroll around the block or through the park, but a lengthy journey on a well-worn path. And it's a journey that leads away from our past, when we lived in darkness, when we were damaged by sin, cut off from the presence of God, unable to walk correctly. And life in the kingdom of God is this pathway that leads us to our goal, our eternal home in the presence of God. But the way home isn't an elevator or even an escalator, it's a path, right? And the path is one where we advance one step at a time. Now, years ago, one of my teachers pointed out that when Proverbs 4:27 says, "Turn your foot away from evil," the imagery pictures a person walking slowly enough to make a correction in your direction with a single step, a single turning of your foot as you go along the way. And you're able to avoid going down the wrong way, down the path that leads to destruction. You can turn around if you find that you've entered that evil way, or even if you've gone quite a ways down it. You can still turn your foot from evil and head back to the road that leads to the brighter day of eternal life. It's that picture of taking small steps in order to make progress that has been in my mind as I've been doing my exercises and going to my therapy appointments. I knew as soon as I went down on that pickleball court in Nashville that I had a serious injury. Professional athletes who tear their Achilles can spend a year rehabilitating before they get back to full capacity. So I knew that I was looking at a long recovery time. Recognizing that fact and accepting that as my new reality was a key step in my own personal emotional health. There was no point in dwelling on the what-ifs. Wondering why I said, let's play one more. That wasn't going to help me get better. And neither was brooding over what might have been if I hadn't chased down that shot that was over my head. I was injured. The injury was serious and debilitating. And the only way I was going to get better was to do the work, the small steps that the doctor and the physical therapist had laid out for me. I would offer to you that that's a description of us before we come to Christ, and sometimes even after, when we're still severely injured. Well, the first phase of my treatment was actually simply being faithful to stay off my foot. You see the picture of my leg there. That's there in Nashville. First phase, don't put any weight on it. Wear the boot all day, every day, except when you're in the shower. And then after a month, the orthopedist examined me and said he could feel the fibers of my tendons starting to connect again. I was beginning to heal. And that meant that I could now begin physical therapy. My first appointment was actually kind of funny. The therapist began by assessing what I could do. They needed to get a baseline. So some of the things they asked me to do, I couldn't do. So the treatment consisted of them showing me what they wanted me to do, to move my toes or move my foot a certain way, me trying to do what they said by using my Jedi mind powers aimed at my foot, while we all looked at my foot that wasn't actually moving at all. But then I did my exercises every day, even though I couldn't see any improvement at all at first. Gradually, as I kept doing those daily exercises, I began to see some tangible differences. And weeks of repetitious exercises, small steps of choosing to be persistent, to be diligent in doing those daily tasks, was building something in me. I could feel my strength increasing. I could see some improved flexibility. And a month into my physical therapy, I can tell that I am better than I was, even though I still have a long way to go. Persistence consists of doing a lot of little things over and over, building habits through repetition until they become automatic, until they become a part of your daily life. Proverbs often refers to this as diligence. Proverbs 12:24 and 27 says, "The hand of the diligent will rule, while the slothful will be put to forced labor. And whoever is slothful will not roast his game, but the diligent person will get precious wealth." The New Testament puts it this way: "Whoever is faithful in little will be faithful in much." Luke 16:10. Being faithful, diligent, steadfast, steady, consistent. These are not personality qualities you are born with or born without. They are traits or qualities that you develop as you make choices to persist, to keep walking down the path, to keep doing the little things, to keep doing the program that will bring you healing. The author of the letter to Hebrews refers to this as discipline. God's divine plan, His exercise plan, if you will, to bring you to maturity in your faith and your walk with Jesus. For the moment, he says, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant. But later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Therefore, lift your drooping hands and strengthen your weak knees and make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may not be put out of joint, but rather be healed. I almost always chuckle when I read verse 11 there. All discipline seems painful rather than pleasant. That has to be the most understated truth in the Bible. Discipline is painful, not pleasant. Oh, really? Really? These exercises aren't designed to be fun and enjoyable? What a surprise. But persisting in our faith, in making the little choices to do righteousness, to pray, to read and study the Scriptures, to worship, to invest my life in the things of God and in the people of God, to be faithful and regular in giving and serving, to participate in the life of the church, to share my faith and the gospel message with others. These are the small steps, the spiritual exercises that help me get well, to recover from the damage that I inflicted upon myself through my own sinfulness and from any damage that others did to me through their own sinfulness. And day by day, bit by bit, building one thing upon another, taking one step after another, I persist and find after time I'm getting well. I'm getting better, stronger, more capable, more able to recognize when God is speaking, quicker to discern what the Bible means, more sure when I tell others about what God is doing in me because the exercises are doing what they are designed to do to help me get well spiritually. And that has a powerful effect on my emotional health because remember, every part of us is connected to every other part. And the end result is that you develop the characteristic of being reliable with the capability of greater strength and ability. What was once injured and feeble and weak has become healed and stronger and more capable. Why? Because you did the daily, tedious little things that were designed to improve your capacity and build you up. You kept going even when you couldn't see the improvement happening or when the change wasn't apparent yet or it wasn't enough to satisfy you. You persisted, and over time, God brought healing and wholeness and strength to you. Think about how important it is to be steady. Would you hire someone to work for you who might show up now and then? Or are you looking for someone who is reliable, who isn't given to impulsive changes? You want the reliable person, don't you? You want the person who keeps at it until they learn how to do the job and who will get the job done because they won't quit until it's finished. You want the steady person because the steady person is someone who thinks through their decisions carefully rather than making random impulsive decisions that lead to chaos and ruin. Well, if that's true of the person you would hire to work for you, isn't it also true of the person you want to be? When you're walking, do you feel confident if you have an unsteady gait? Do you feel good when your memory is unreliable? No, you don't. It's unsettling. It's aggravating. You feel like your body or your mind has betrayed you. And you want all of your faculties to be working properly. Of course you do. Well, spiritually and emotionally, how do we get there? I may not be able to do everything that I did when I was younger or as quickly and easily as I used to be able to do, but I can still do this. I can choose to be persistent. I can work on the small steps that will build and strengthen me so that I am physically and mentally and emotionally and relationally and spiritually healthy. Excuse me. So how does choosing to be persistent actually help me emotionally? Let me try to illustrate this with another episode from our time on sabbatical from the earlier part. During the first part of our month away, we spent a week in the Smoky Mountains with my sister and her husband. That's my sister there with my wife. On our first day there, we decided to hike the Rainbow Falls Trail up Mount LeConte. And the trail is rated as moderate, so we felt pretty confident that we would be able to do it. We discovered two things about the trail that day. One was that moderate covered a fairly large range of possibilities, and this trail was on the upper end of that range. And the second thing we discovered was that the distance that the trail covered was somewhat disputed. The distance on the official signs appeared to be quite a bit shorter than the GPS on my brother-in-law's phone indicated. The hike turned out to be long and arduous and somewhat tedious, There were definitely times when the scenery was beautiful. And it was nice to be out in the forest. Plus, there were plenty of other people on the trail with us, including a fair number who had gotten up earlier than we did. They were on their way back down the mountain after already reaching the falls. But it didn't take too long for the difficulty of that trek to start to affect us emotionally. And my wife, who is ever the cheerful one, always looking on the bright side, believing the best about everyone, she began asking hikers who were on their way back down, "How much further is it to the falls?" and expected an encouraging answer. "Are we halfway there yet?" she would ask. And the responses varied, but usually it was some version of a condescending smile, perhaps a chuckle, a shake of the head. "Oh, no, it's still a long way." Not exactly what you want to hear in that situation, especially when you hear it from a pack of youngsters who passed you already earlier on the way up, and they're now bouncing their way down the trail, heading off to their next adventure for the day. Well, those responses started to discourage the other three a little, though we learned to laugh it off. But I took a different tack. I went back to my experiences of hiking in the Rocky Mountains as a boy, and I set my mind to just keep putting one foot in front of the other at a steady pace. And what that did for me was to corral my emotions and use that energy to strengthen my determination to make it to the top. And instead of letting my emotions drain my energy by going up and down, depending on whether this section of the hike was harder or easier, or the scenery was nice or boring, or my legs were getting tired or not, I chose to persist. I made my emotions get in line with my will so I could finish what we had set out to do. And that allowed me to realize two great outcomes. I made it to the top and back down again without giving up. And I enjoyed the day, including the nice view at the falls, instead of resenting all the difficulties that we had to overcome. Now, let me be clear. I'm not talking about suppressing your emotions or ignoring your emotions, becoming a Vulcan or a robot. I'm talking about letting God govern your emotions by submitting them to Him and putting them in their rightful place. Our emotions have to be fully engaged if we're going to be fully healthy human beings. God never designed us to be unemotional or so tightly controlled that nothing can touch us or make us feel anything. That's an indication of deep damage, not of spiritual or emotional health. However, God also did not design us to be controlled or led by our feelings and our emotions. They are unreliable guides. Quick to change, more likely to lead us astray than to put us on the right course, especially when it comes to persevering in the things of God. Our emotions will be quick to scream out when it starts getting hard or when it's painful to stay the course. And that inner desire to quit and take the easy way out will speak out very loudly and point out all the ways you could escape from the current pain and head down that path that seems right, except that it leads to death. There's a third great outcome that I realized from my experience of hiking, and that's the spiritual fruit that persistence helps to produce. Another word for persistence is perseverance. And perseverance is doing good in holding fast to your faith, in spiritual disciplines, it develops your spiritual capacities, especially your faith. When you persist in doing good when it costs you, when it's inconvenient, when you aren't rewarded or thanked or even noticed or maybe even mocked or punished, that builds spiritual muscle. And one of the things I've been reminded of in my physical therapy exercises is that if you want to get stronger, you have to add resistance to what you're doing. Weight has to be added, or more repetitions, or both. Because if the exercise is too easy, you're not helping yourself gain strength. There has to be resistance to build muscle. So whether you're choosing to persist in doing good, or keeping your attitude right, or having your devotional time with the Lord, or speaking kindly to unkind people, or stepping out of your Sunday morning routine to engage with someone you don't know and share what you're learning about God, the more you persist, the more your faith will grow. And success, by success I mean maturity and fruitfulness, that comes from keeping going when it's hard. It's when you set your mind and heart and will and determine to persist instead of just following whatever gives you an emotional thrill or a release at that moment. That's how you develop your spiritual depth and your emotional health. Spiritual health and emotional health are very closely connected. And like your health in any area of your life, they can develop and deepen and grow, or they can dry up, weaken, atrophy. Let me give you some practical helps, probably very familiar ones, but helps that you can use to deepen your emotional and spiritual health. Number one, make a small change in your schedule. Everyone's busy. All of us are probably doing too much, trying to do too much, even in retirement. So adding time for devotions or a small group or a class on evangelism just sounds impossible. How can I fit it in? I'm already too busy. Well, here's how. Make one small change in your schedule. Keep that new change up for 6 weeks or 10. Because after about 6 weeks, it will start to feel like a very normal part of your day or your week. And what started as a new habit has become just, well, that's just what I do. And then add one more small change. And do that for 6 weeks or so. And keep going, keep persisting, and you'll be building new spiritual muscles. And what comes along with that is a healthier emotional balance and ability to keep your emotions from just running amok. For example, find some scriptures that can help you remember to persist, to persevere, and put them where you can see them every day, several times a day. If you can't think of anyone, use the one we started with in Hebrews 12, 11, 12, and 13. Memorize them. Treat that like therapy exercises that you have to do. And make reading them and repeating them a regular exercise that you need to do to repair your damaged heart and emotions. Number two, use reminders. Our world is way too filled with distractions and noise. And all of that noise and distraction, by the way, is designed to sell you something. All of it. And with all of that that's going on, it's no wonder you can't remember stuff. So use reminders, alarms, or sticky notes, or notifications on your phone. Put something in place, something in front of your eyes that you don't have to think about to remind you to do the thing that you are trying to turn into a steady habit. And just do that until it becomes so automatic you don't need the reminder anymore. And then wait a few months until the reminder becomes more of a nuisance than a help, because you're automatically doing what you set out to do and you no longer need the reminder, so you can remove it. And maybe just keep the reminder anyway. A lot of you have pill boxes, right? Like me, you have pill boxes, right? Those pill boxes are not foolproof. You still have to remember to look at them. You have to remember to fill them up and refill them. But what they do is they make it easy to persist in a good and healthy and helpful habit. They're a reminder, and they make that easy to do what you want to do. And the same is true for tending to your emotional and spiritual health. Reminders make it easier to do what you've decided to do. Number three, enlist a friend. Everything's easier with a friend. Even if you're doing something on your own, it's easier knowing that your friend is doing the same thing at the same time somewhere else, or at least is checking in with you to see if you're doing what you said you're going to do. It's called the buddy system. There's a reason it works. Because we were made to live in relationship and community. Excuse me, that's really annoying. For you to have to hear that, sorry. Listen to this. Involving others in your life, in your healing, is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of smartness. It's doing life the way God intended you to live. That's one of the reasons that being part of a small group is so important. Regularly meeting with others who are also walking with Jesus is a crucial part of building a healthy faith. It allows you to build friendships that will deepen your understanding of God and build your capacity to trust and develop your relational strength. And it can be a huge help when you're trying to work on growing your capacity to persevere and to persist. Number 4, weave the spiritual and relational and physical elements together. When you begin a new something, a new discipline or a new activity or a new habit, the more aspects of your life that you can connect to that new something, the more likely it is that you will continue to do that something and the more impact it will have on your life. So if you want to develop your capacity for perseverance, you need to add one thing to your schedule. So let's say you're going to add a daily time in the Word. You're going to start with a small step, say 15 minutes. And to help, you've enlisted a friend. So for part of your time, you're each going to read the same portion of the Bible. And then you're going to text each other with a short message about what you liked or learned that day. Maybe instead of texting, you call each other every other day or twice a week. And after 6 weeks or so, you decide the next thing you're going to add is a short time of prayer. Maybe, let's say, another 15 minutes. Well, how about taking that time and praying while you take a short walk around your neighborhood? What you're doing is weaving together the spiritual and the physical and the relational aspects of you so that you are more fully engaged in what it is that you're doing. And that will have a powerful impact on your emotional health. You will find that your ability to respond to stressful situations or deal with your fears or your anxieties will be much improved. You'll have a greater degree of spiritual insight and peace because you're starting to develop your spiritual and emotional muscles. You're also going to find that you feel better about your life and about yourself and about the future and about your day. Why? Because you're doing something of spiritual importance, something that has eternal weightiness, and you're doing that with someone you care about who also cares about you. You're building up your strength so that you're better equipped to deal with stress and with conflict and with obstacles. You're developing your emotional flexibility, your ability to respond to unexpected changes and to successfully handle difficult situations that used to throw you completely for a loop, because you're doing the small things that add up to big things in your life. Number 5, don't quit if you forget or miss a day or stumble or miss 2 days or 6. Pick up where you were and resume or start again. Right? Suppose you're heading out in your car. You get in your car, you have a destination. You know somewhere you want to go. Well, if you make a wrong turn on your way there, or you find out there's road construction on the way, you don't turn around and go home. Right? You get back on the road or you take a different route to avoid the construction, but you continue on. And you might arrive later than you anticipated, but so what? You made it to your destination. It's the same with developing your capacity to persist. You get to that destination by not quitting, by persisting. Likewise, if you fail a couple times or you have trouble getting started, you don't say, well, I guess it wasn't God's will for me to do this. Because I shouldn't expect that I would ever stumble or err? Because if it's God's will, I won't have any opposition? No! That's silly. If God wants you to do something, do it. And God clearly wants us to develop our capacity to persist, because that's what produces spiritual fruit in us and brings increase to His kingdom in our hearts, in our homes, in our church, in our community. So if you want to be emotionally healthy, you're going to have to develop your capacity to persevere, and the only way to do that is by choosing to persist in the small things over time.